Welcome, everybody, to something that I've been kind of thinking on and off doing for a while. As you will no doubt notice, we are currently on Bing Images. This is solely because I don't have concept art for what I'm about to talk about, so you get to look at random shit on Bing. I own none of the photos, nor do I claim to own any of them. Anyway, with that out of the way, so I had a coworker. And he ended up leaving for greener pastures. And if the coworker is watching this, he knows that I'm talking about him. But there was this thing that I've been creating for, God, 6, 7, maybe even 8 years. I don't know exactly how long I've been making this, but it's been going on for a long time. And back when he used to work with me, I would tell him about this concept, and I'll get to it in just a second. But he was always like, you should really get this out there, like write it down or make a video or something and, kind of describe this stuff. And I've been putting it off, and I had been putting it off. And then when he left, I said I was going to do it right after he left, and then I put it off. And then I put it off, and then I put it off. And now here we finally are, me finally doing it, like, months later. So there's this idea that I had called Shattered Legacies. And I honestly don't know what I want to do with this idea. Originally, the idea was that it was going to be a short story. Back when I first started thinking up this thing. Because back when I was in high school, I used to write. I quite enjoyed writing. But I kind of stopped because I moved on to other stuff. So I decided that, maybe at some point I would write this up as like a short story and, I don't know, post it somewhere like on Reddit or something. I don't know. But then I got to thinking about it and I was like, I could make this into like an anime or a video game. And let's be honest, I'm probably never going to do that because I don't really lack the determination to do it. But I do want to get this idea out there because it fascinates me and I've been working on it, like I said, for like 6 or 7 years. I've been working on it for so long, I'm starting to forget shit that I created for it because my dumbass didn't write it down on a notepad. So it's probably going to be very jumbled up. I'm going to tell you right now, this isn't a sequence of events. This is more so I'm going to pick a topic from Shattered Legacies and we're going to talk about it. And in this first episode, this is an introduction and kind of just like a general overview of what this is. I've been thinking of a great way to kind of give you an example of how this is, or how Shattered Legacies is, and I've kind of come up with this idea, and it's not really a great way to describe it, but think Dragon Ball Z meets Warhammer 40k, like the lighter side of Warhammer 40k, not the super grim dark, meets any magic genre, meets any sci-fi genre, meets, I don't even know. Like I said, I don't really have a good way of describing it, but you kind of get an idea. So basically, the main faction that we look at, because there's not really a main character, there will be times where we're focusing, like let's say that I make this into an actual anime, there will be times where there could be like 20 episodes in a row where we're watching and following along with this specific character, but that doesn't mean that they're the main character. Basically all the characters we see are essentially secondary characters, and the civilizations themselves as a whole are the main characters. I know that's kind of weird to think about, but you kind of understand what I mean. And so I'm going to go over each of the main factions and the general kind of idea behind Shattered Legacies. So as for factions, we have the first and main faction, the one that we will probably spend the majority of the time talking about, and kind of, like I said, if I were to make this an anime, this would be the civilization that we watch the most. This is the main protagonist, is what is known as the Siritan Empire. And don't ask me how to spell Siritan, because I still don't know how to spell it. But the Siritan Empire is basically, think of any sci-fi empire and then think of them on steroids. Like, the technology that the Siritan Empire has access to is just so absolutely balls to the walls, batshit crazy, that, like, Star Wars doesn't come close. Warhammer 40k clearly doesn't come close. Like, think of any hyper advanced civilization in sci-fi, and chances are the Siritan Empire is probably more advanced than them. Now, that's not to say that there aren't sci-fi mediums out there that aren't more advanced than the Siritan Empire, but it's definitely difficult because this is a civilization that has multiple times intentionally and deliberately broken the very laws of nature, the laws of physics, and the laws of reality. These are like, this is like end tier for a civilization. This is end game. We'll do basically like deep dives on each faction and different concepts at a later date, but for right now, basically what you need to know is the Siritans are essentially a bioengineered species. They were basically at one time humans, and the humans basically made a super soldier project trying to artificially create magic, and technically they were successful, but they basically, this is like a black site. It didn't go the way they had thought, and they basically said it was a failure, and these super soldiers, quote unquote, are slated for disposal. We don't need them anymore. They can just go and we can just shove them in the forever box. And they found out about this, and the test subjects were not happy, and they basically broke from containment, stole the spaceship, and pissed off into the void of space. And the human race is basically like, why stop them? It's one ship that we lost. It's not even like a battleship. Like, it doesn't have really any weapons. It doesn't have a great way to sustain a civilization or sustain a crew indefinitely. And like, it's one ship. What does it matter? They're probably just going to die in the void of space. Well, it turns out that these new humans were really fucking determined, and they didn't just last one generation. They didn't last two generations. They lasted hundreds of generations on this one ship, and thank God they had the spare parts in the cargo hold to basically keep this ship running until they finally reached the outer edges of the humans' territory. They found a spaceship, they found a space station, they stole the space station, and then they stole the planet that the space station was orbiting. And basically, the humans made the worst decision of their lives by not going out to the single ship, because they then created an interstellar civilization and then basically created an infinite blood feud with the humans. Faction number 2 is obviously humans. I don't think I need to really explain what a human is. You should know what a human is, and if you don't know what a human is, you need to either learn biology or get off our world, you damn extraterrestrial. Moving on. Let's go to another image. There we go. New image. Fancy. It's Earth and the Moon. Anyway, so faction number 3 is known as the Yvetans. And the Yvetans, if you remember, I had said that there's not only hyper sci-fi, but there's also magic. And that's where the Yvetans come in. The Yvetans, out of all species, at least all major species, they're the ones that are the most attuned with magic. And they look indistinguishable from humans, save for one characteristic feature, and that is that they have sky blue hair. Doesn't matter if it's hair on top of their head, facial hair, hell, even like armpit hair, chest hair, back hair, it doesn't matter. The hair is always light blue, and they have an insane affinity for magic. But it's more so like quantity over quality sort of thing, Every single person in the Yvetan species can use magic, but it's fairly infrequent that you have somebody who can use really powerful magic. And there is like a whole magic system here. It's not just magic, I can do whatever the fuck I want. I mean, it is to a certain extent, but there are rules to this magic system that I think some people might find compelling. The next faction is known as the Bastilians, and the Bastilians are a bit of an interesting one because they're a species that grew up, let me get my words correct. They're a species that evolved on an insanely unrealistically cold planet. The fact that they even evolved to begin with is astonishing. But as a result, their species naturally evolved to always have thick coats of fur, despite the fact that they are basically bipedal. So they're a species that has a lot of fur. They basically look like a miniature Bigfoot. That's what they look like. you know. But the thing about their species is that because they evolved on a hyper cold planet, they didn't really have the means to create a lot of the technology, which kind of makes sense in a weird way, but also kind of doesn't. They basically didn't focus on technology all that much. They kind of got to the medieval era and kind of just stuck there. They still made advanced technology, but they always just kind of were like this weird medieval hyper sci-fi era. And so, like, they're prized as foot soldiers. When it comes to their faction, the one thing that they excel above all else compared to any other faction is the fact that they are astonishingly good foot soldiers. And it's one of the reasons why basically every single faction wants to bring the Bastilian Empire under their wing, because they make phenomenal, unrivaled foot soldiers. And I'm not talking about like medieval combat, like with swords and shit. I mean, foot soldier in general. They are pretty damn accurate with any type of ranged weapon. They are damn near unmatched in melee combat. Like, they just make good foot soldiers. The next species is known as the Barramon. And the Barramon are essentially like, think to Halo and the Brutes. They are an incredibly aggressive... It's basically a mixture of Halo Brutes and Warhammer 40k orcs. It's a civilization that is largely based off of might makes right. The strongest is the one that is in charge. He clearly knows what he's doing, even if he's as dumb as a box of bolts. But they look very similar to brutes. They're not obviously identical. This isn't a rip. But they look very similar to brutes, but they have like the anger management of orcs from 40k. They're constantly getting into wars with either themselves or other factions. Despite this, they're very technologically advanced, but in a really weird way. The Barramon have essentially organic technology. So, like, some of their biggest war machines, they look like they're made of vines and tree logs and tree limbs. And it's really fascinating to see this kind of art style that I have planned for them, because it's like, that should not be in the void of space. That should not be space worthy. But there's fucking Barramon in there breathing air, and it's like, how the fuck does a tree turn into a spaceship? The Barramon did it somehow. I don't know how. I don't really know. The Siritan scientists might know, but I have no fucking clue. But yeah, it's just one of the cool things about them. One of the final major species is known as the Florians. And the Florians are an utterly bizarre species, because there's technically two different, life forms that inhabit the same name. There are the original Florians, which we'll simply just call the precursor Florians. And they're basically, again, a humanoid species, but they obviously have their own unique design. I haven't really put much time and thought into them because they're very irrelevant to the main idea of Shattered Legacies. But basically, their species was hyper pacifistic. Like, even if it's literally aliens are invading our planet and are slaughtering all of the people, we are still pacifistic. We will not raise arms. And they understood. The precursor Florians understood that this was going to get them killed, basically. It was going to drive them to extinction eventually. So they basically made robots to do the killing for them, so they themselves didn't have to dirty their hands, despite the fact that is crazy that you're still technically murdering things. You yourself may have not done it, but the thing that you created did. So you're technically not pacifistic, but they still see themselves as pacifistic. Whatever. Basically, one of these robots gained self-awareness and hyper-intelligence by constantly evolving, and it basically feared, oh god, my creators are going to find out what I've become and try to destroy me. I need to fucking leave now. Get technology that can rival them, because clearly they built me, they're very advanced, and I need to rival them so I can protect myself from them. And it was basically just this one machine that is called the Florians, the proper Florians, and this robot basically went off, duplicated itself, evolved those duplications to be unique instances of itself, and continued its technological level to such an extreme degree that they're like the only species, quotations marks species, that has technology that is even more advanced than the Siritan Empire. Like, it's absolutely insane. And you can basically, like, to get a general idea, and again, this isn't a rip of the design, but to get a kind of a general idea of what they look like, think of Subnautica 2 and what Alan's body looks like. The architects. They look fairly similar to that. They're quadrupedal. They kind of look like a centaur. You know, they're quadrupedal that goes up into a more human-like torso. But obviously they're different, and they're just insane on the battlefield. Like, you can literally throw like a million dudes at one Florian that are all constantly shooting insane weaponry at it, and it won't even like scratch the paint on its carapace. And it can just like basically click its fingers. A weapon will materialize next to his shoulder that is just levitating in the air and just wipe out a million dudes. Like, they're fucking insane. But so it basically raised up like 40 of these duplicates of itself and went to its creators like ready for a fight, but also ready to like be like, we demand our own independence. You know, we do not want to be ruled over you, nor do we want to be destroyed by you. And then found out what the precursor Florians were like, and they were like, wow, this was a massive fucking waste of time. You won't even defend yourself if I try to stab you in the heart right now. This is disappointing. And basically just pissed off into the universe, never to hear of their creators ever again. And that's the Florians. There's obviously more factions, but I don't want to overload you guys right now. But so the general idea is that we primarily watch the Siritan Empire and see how they react to various different situations. And it's a delicate balancing act because there are gods, like real gods, beings that have power that we cannot begin to fathom, that are capable of manipulating reality around them, which there are technically mortal beings that can do that too, but, you know, it's a god. You understand the concept of what a god is. And so it's this delicate balancing act between constantly innovating and becoming stronger and more superior to the civilizations that are around you, delicately balancing not getting annihilated because of the wars that the Siritan Empire are forever in, because they're a warring faction, trying to not piss off the gods and deal with a little bit of a problem known as Blight Plague that we'll get into on its own deep dive. I'm not going to spoil anything there. But, so yeah. So there's probably more that I could say, but I think I'm just going to cut the episode here. This is the concept of Shattered Legacies, and its barest kind of idea. You know, you understand who we're watching, you understand that there is magic, that there is technology, and that there are gods in the firmament that are potentially a huge problem. You understand, at the very least, you get a very, very basic understanding of each of the factions and kind of what they look like. So I hope you guys actually enjoy this and look forward to more episodes of deep dives on various different topics. The next one, we're probably going to do a hardcore deep dive into the Siritan Empire, and me being me, I'm probably going to get sidetracked a couple of times, and it's probably going to be a long ass episode. I'm probably only going to post each of these videos, one of these Shattered Legacies videos a week, because sitting here nonstop talking for however long I've been recording now is absolutely annihilating my voice right now, because I'm not used to talking this much. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys are looking forward to more of these videos. And I just realized I don't remember what my hotkey is to stop recording. This could be really interesting. I hope it's 9. But anyway, until then, guys, I will see you later. I'm just going to tap every single numpad key and hope that one of these is the right one. I know that numpad 8 stops or starts the recording. Hopefully it's 9.